Hey everybody, what's going on? It's KG. I'm here with another video of the Q90T. Today we're going to talk about darkroom performance and just really overall reflections and how that performs. So, in a real world environment, what is it going to look like when you have a light on? Well, just take a look at the screen right now. You can see that there is a slight reflection. And when I say slight reflection, I mean it's it's a reflection, but is it going to be a mirror like reflection like you'll see in, say, an OLED screen? No, it's not going to be that. So the reflections are definitely tamer than most TVs, though it is a different kind of reflection. And I think this needs to be pointed out that some people might not like this. So the reflection in that we're talking about is going to be more of a smear reflection. And what that means is you can see that it kind of blurs out the actual light. When on certain TVs, you'll just see a mere one for one reflection. Now, this smear will stretch all the way across the screen sometimes. It is very transparent as it gets longer, but you can see a streak and it almost looks very rainbow like. So that could bother a few people. So I really wanted to bring that to some people's attention. If you do have a lot of lights above your TV and you're going to have your lights on a lot. Now, this is one of those TV situations where I'm not really sure how it's going to perform in a very, very brightly lit room by lights. Now, if we're talking about sunlight coming in from the sides, daytime viewing is definitely going to be impacted. Yes, no doubt about that. But there's not a TV on the market that wouldn't be impacted. But yeah, I just really wanted to call that to your guys' attention in case you were wondering about the reflections from lights and things like that. Another thing is you could probably see a computer screen reflection if it's directly in the back of you, if it's really bright, or if you have a TV set up directly behind you for whatever reason, you'd probably see the reflection from that TV too, if that's a really bright TV that is going to be projected off of it. So you do have to be mindful of your room situation before you buy any TV, really. I don't know any TV that wouldn't be impacted in those sort of circumstances in the first place. But overall, I would say in a bright room, this TV is probably better than most, if not the best on the market. I know I was getting that question a lot, so I thought I would just kind of comment on that. Moving on, we are going to go ahead and flip the lights off. And now we are in a pitch black room. Now, to touch on the pitch black room viewing situation and dispelling a couple of myths about the Q90T, people are saying, hey, if you need to view in a pitch black room, your only option is OLED. That couldn't be further from the truth. Does OLED look really great in a pitch black room? Yeah, no duh. Based on the technology, OLED is really hard to beat. That being said, this Q90T isn't far from an OLED. It looks really, really good in a pitch black room. The colors are fantastic. The contrast is just great. Even on standard local dimming, this TV is fantastic. In this video that we're watching with the guy spinning the fire, you can see that it's really great. Now, when you pull up the menus, do you see a little bit of blooming from time to time? Yes, no doubt about it with menus. Sure, that's just the on-screen TV menus. You're not watching TV with the menus up in the first place. Also, I'll say that my camera definitely will show way more blooming than is actually there, as will most YouTubers will say the same thing when they're showing you their videos. That's just the way cameras film. Now, talk about overall colors and the brightness in this TV. I'm speechless sometimes when it comes down to that, the way it looks. So let's take that example. You're in a pitch black room, right? When you're seeing like that fire come up from a dark, very pitch black dark scene, and that fire hits out of nowhere, and you're watching an HDR, your whole room lights up like fireworks. It's just like you just have a fireworks show in front of you. That's something you're not going to get with an OLED. You're just not. And I'm coming from an OLED. So I would know. And this is something that just is so spectacular when you see it for the first time. It blows you away. You might even just think, oh, that's like too bright almost. But is there such thing as too bright when it comes down to this kind of TV? Maybe there is. But for me, when you're expecting it and you're like, okay, this is gonna be cool, it's just like, man, this car is about to blow up and it's gonna be awesome. Um, if you know a car is gonna blow up, but if it's out of nowhere, it's like, whoa, it's crazy. And that's a weird explanation. It's kind of like you gotta see it for yourself to see it. Um, and it really just makes me excited talking about it because uh, I wish I could show everybody how spectacular this TV is in person that I know, and everybody that has come over that has seen it, which is family members really, because COVID, I don't really invite anybody over. We have them just blown away by this TV, and they know I used to have an OLED, and they say this TV is better to them. Why do they say that? And I think it comes down to this. I think just a brighter, more spectacular colors and overall just highlights is kind of just what gives you that wow factor. Now, there's going to be some areas when you have this TV coming from an OLED where you're like, okay, yeah, maybe an OLED looks better here. Maybe an OLED looks better here. Um, but when it comes to these kind of bright transition scenes from dark to bright, OLED can't touch it. And the reason why is ABL. So ABL on an OLED is really going to limit any sort of like bright fire. All of a sudden, this bright fire coming out. ABL is going to be like, no, let's dim that a little bit. Let's get that down there. So yeah, and really OLEDs already are not very bright. I think they max out at around 800 nits of brightness. So if you take a TV that's not that bright, right? And then you apply an auto brightness limiter to it, which is what ABL is. So when it detects a very bright image, it'll dim it. Then we got ourselves a very dim situation. And this is why when I came from an OLED, I was like, well, game mode sometimes looks very dull. It really does. And I think it was because I played a lot of bright games and would go into like bright scenes and movies, and all of a sudden it's just not as spectacular. And don't get me wrong, I love OLED and I love the way it looks and I love the technology. But that is my number one downside with an OLED in general is the auto brightness limiter. ABL is probably the worst thing about an OLED. Now everything else about an OLED is fantastic, other than burn-in, of course, and that's a different situation. That all just depends on your usage. I'm not gonna say burn-in is a huge deal for most people because it's not, and most people won't even experience it, but they will experience ABL. And when you experience ABL, you might not like it. So it's really up to you to kind of see what the pros and the cons are. If you're on the fence about buying this TV or you're buying an OLED, I think the top comments of all my videos was like, hey, should I get this or an OLED? Should I get the Q90T or an OLED? Right now, I own the Q90T and I can just give you my opinion on that. But I also owned an OLED in the past and I can give my opinion on what I didn't like about that. And really, you can just take it as that. And it's just one man's opinion. I want you to check it out yourself if you got a chance and then make that decision. But please do not let people tell you that this Q90T is not great in a dark room, because it's fantastic in a dark room. And that dark to light transition of like really dark to all of a sudden fire and your whole room is filled with light out of nowhere is spectacular. And that feeling right there, you cannot have that on an OLED. You can argue with me in the comments about that all you want, but you cannot get that in an OLED. Period. Well, I know I got a little rambly there, but as you can see in the background, I do have a still image up. In my settings, I'm going to go through the different default modes that come with this TV once you get the update. I'm showing off movie mode, filmmaker mode, dynamic, standard, and then natural. I always forget natural for some reason. And I'm just kind of comparing them really. Overall, what the actual image, still image in a dark room would look like if I switched it, just to give you an idea of what it does to the colors. And this kind of gives you a good idea of what it does to the yellows and the reds, and just like the whites. This is a really good example of showing you how dynamic is just going to oversaturate and over exaggerate all of the images on the screen. Standard is going to be what the TV ships with. I'd say it's a good transition between dynamic and movie mode. Like if you bunched them all together and they had a baby, standard might be that, but it's not very accurate out of the box, though it's not too bad. The natural is going to be more like dynamic, but supposedly has more natural skin tones. And it is definitely like less exaggerated than dynamic is for certain things. You'll see less color clipping with that, but it still is very unnatural, despite it saying natural. And then movie mode out of the box is the one I suggest to use. It's going to be the best out of the box, and stay tuned because I do have the full settings video coming. And here's the thing, it's just taking a really long time to film that. I did want to make this a special video about settings. Now, that's why it's taking a little bit longer. So it's going to be a settings series. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be HDR, SDR, and then video games. It's going to be 3 videos. I'm going to break them down individually, one by one. Now, when you use other people's settings, it's totally different than using their settings because you're not using their same environment, if that makes sense. So you do have to keep that in mind when you do use other people's settings. And me personally, I just dial in my settings based on to what I like to see for my images. And that's what I would suggest you guys do too, because at the end of the day, you're not having somebody come to your house and review your accuracy of your picture quality. You know, you're not having somebody come up to your screen with a colorimeter and be like, oh, yep, this is accurate. No, you want what looks good to you, what looks natural to you, what fits your personal preference. And at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. So anyway, guys, sorry for rambling. This has become a really long video when I didn't want it to be, but hey, that's the way it goes sometimes. If you guys are still with me, thank you. If you want to see more, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.